Hey everybody, before we start going, just a word from our sponsor this week, KVH. High-speed connectivity is only part of the story. What really matters is how you use it. KVH combines LEO connectivity with advanced bandwidth management tools, giving operators full control over how data is prioritized, distributed, and secured on board. With CommBox Edge, you can apply policies by application, user, or vessel, so critical operations always come first. The result? Better performance, reduced waste, and a more efficient use of every megabyte. And with integrated cybersecurity and managed services, your network stays protected as well as optimized. Smarter connectivity starts here. Visit kvh.com. Thank you for listening, and now on to the podcast.
Welcome, everyone. You are listening to The Last Dinosaur, and I'm your host, Chris Amersano. This is the podcast where we explore the evolving maritime landscape and hear from the innovators leading that charge. Today, I'm pleased to welcome Giampiero Soncini, co-founder and managing director of Oceanly. Giampiero has spent decades at the intersection of shipping, technology, and innovation. His career spans service in the Italian Navy, working with NATO research vessels, leadership roles including at SpecTec and ShipNet. Today, he's leading Oceanly together with CEO Frederic Lerche-Tourneau as it helps shipping companies improve vessel performance, efficiency, and decision-making. Few people have had a front-row seat to the evolution of maritime digitalization as today's guest. Welcome, Giampiero.
Thank you, Chris. Nice to be here.
So let's start with you and what you're doing and where you are today in your journey before we get to what you're doing today with Oceanly. But you have a fantastic and interesting background, including one that started in the Italian Navy and then NATO. And I'd love to hear how all of this have shaped where you are today.
Thanks. Yes, as a matter of fact, I was 14 years with the Italian Navy as a career officer, did the academy, and then graduated in electrical engineering. And then I served on board of the Maritime class frigates and several other ships. And then I resigned and I joined NATO, where I was in charge of the technical operation of a research vessel called Alliance, which was the best and first vessel ever owned by NATO. How did they shape it? They've been absolutely paramount in my life because with the Navy, I was able to, when I graduated, they let me complete freedom of what I chose to for my thesis. And I selected 2 computers linked with optical fibers. This was in 1978. And in 1977 was the first year that there was a sort of a commercial use of optical fibers. And I was the first one in Italy to try to connect 2 computers together and see whether we had the electromagnetic interference or not, which I was able to demonstrate. And it was the first case ever. And it gave me a passion to do something completely innovative, completely new, which I then applied on the Maritime class frigates, which were the first one to be completely automated, not only on the engine part, but also on the electrical part with an Intel 8080 processor. So I was able to combine both in the studies and in career with the Navy, a lot of interest in whatever was new, whatever was innovative. And then I left the Navy and I joined NATO because the Navy at a given stage didn't allow me to innovate as much as I wanted. I had discovered a handbook from the U.S. Navy called Plant Maintenance Systems on board of U.S. Navy ships. I fell in love with the methodology, applied on my ships, and by the Italian Navy told me this is against our rules and regulations, so you should abide to the rules and regulations. I told the Navy that the rules were 30 years old and I couldn't run a brand new vessel with old rules. I said, yes, you have to do it, and then I resigned and I joined NATO. And NATO was an amazing ship. It was 20 years ahead of its time. It was the first vessel in the world with a GPS. It was breathtaking. It was the quietest vessel ever built. It had a phenomenal type of propulsion. It was so innovative that it was crazy. Just to give you an idea, the GPS costs $700,000 of 1986 money. Okay, and it was huge. It was the first vessel in the world with a complete integrated navigation system, which occupied 2 Hewlett-Packard 1000 in 2 separate rooms. It was simply gigantic. And there I had fun. We did funny things, hunting Russian submarines up in the North Sea. It was the period of the Hunt of Red October by Tom Clancy, the book. It was fantastic. But then the Berlin Wall fell, And I found myself having a fantastic job, but that wasn't useful anymore. And therefore, I decided to resign. Then I joined SpecTec, which had been started just a few months before by a group of guys that I met in Norway. Amos was invented by a Norwegian guy called Atle, and I just befriended them and I fell in love with what they were doing, so I joined them. And that started my career in IT and shipping. And this was in 1998.
Was it a hard leap to go from, let's say, the structure of military, whether it was Italian Navy and then to NATO, to maritime shipping, which has its parallels, but then has a lot of differences as well? Forget about for a second things like watchkeeping, which is done differently, but just the whole mindset. Did you feel that to be a big shift? Because that's what, when you talk to people who leave the military, whatever that military branch is, that's one of the things that they have to be aware of and adjust to.
It was a quantum leap. It's completely different. I was shocked by a lot of things. The first one is how efficient merchant shipping is compared to navies. Navies, as an engineer on board of a ship, I did a lot of things in terms of maintenance. I was very organized. I applied planned maintenance, as I said. But in reality, in the Navy, we didn't fix anything. We always called outside contractors to do even the most minute parts. On board of the merchant vessel, including Alliance, which was run with a merchant mentality, let's say. We had a crew, officers and crew from then of Glasgow, which then became Anglo-Easter. So I learned an enormous amount of stuff from them. I remember that my mentor was Jerry Buchanan, who then later became the CEO of Genco and president of Liberia Flag and so registered and so on. So I had the best possible mentor. But even the chief engineers who were working with me, their knowledge was immense, and therefore I understood that merchant shipping is very efficient. At the same time, I was shocked by the lack of structure, the lack of procedures, if you want to. And especially me trying to sell computerized maintenance management systems to the merchant fleet starting in the late 80s. I mean, it was really a cultural divide. It was pretty funny, but sometimes I was shocked by seeing how everything was in the merchant navy.
When you look back at that and you look at the change from when you started selling into maritime to the way it is today, what is one of the biggest things change-wise that you've noticed? Is it the use of data? Is it just accepting of technology? But what is the one thing that resonates with you the most that we've changed for the better or for the worse? And it doesn't even have to be something on the digital side or the technology side.
Look, I have to admit that after I don't know how many years, 45 years in IT and shipping, I get a lot sort of desperate at times because nothing much has changed. Technology has changed. What I was doing in 1986, I'm doing it today. The only difference is dimensions of the hardware and the cost of the hardware and software. But the mentality has been always the roadblock. Shipping is a 6,000 years old industry. And therefore, some of the mentalities are basically the same. They do things and in their own way and to introduce a different way, a more modern way, a more organized way, the more efficient way. Sometimes it's met simply with, if not disdain, which is maybe a strong word, disbelief. And therefore, we're not going to sort it out. I remember every case, every time there was an introduction of something new. The GPS will never, radio officer being eliminated because we had the GMDSS. So ships will never sail without a radio officer. And then you had the actors. Ships will never sail without, the
paper charts.
And then you have UMS. No, you will always have to go inside the machine room and you will always have to control. You cannot remote control anything. Every single time new technology came on board ships, there was always a tremendous resistance, as if Ludism has embedded itself into the maritime world.
Do you think it's that resistance to change that's the biggest block in adoption of software or hardware? Do you think, in fact, it's not really a digitalization issue? I argue on this show that basically it's a change management issue.
It's definitely change. It's a change of mentality. I go to shipping companies today with hundreds of employees working on Excel.
Yeah, exactly. You can never
It's
get all people
mind-boggling.
off Excel.
Exactly. And on top of that, I found out that most of them have never been trained on Excel. Excel is a fantastic tool if you use it properly and if you know how to use it. But more than 90% of the people I meet, they do copy and paste, and that's as much as they can do. So the fact is that there is resistance, also because sometimes it's a fault of the fact that the IT is full of hypes. Every time we come with something new, and I say, even if I consider myself an engineer using IT, I'm not an IT guy. I don't even know how to put together 2 lines of code. So I have no idea. Simply use and abuse even computers to my own benefit to work better. But one of the problems with IT is every time there is something new, it's hyped up. It's going to be a game changer. It's going to be blockchain will revolutionize the world. Everything will be different. Java will be different. This will be different. And it's a lot of BS. You know, things will progress along and will go along. It takes 20 years before, implement something new. It takes less on a private stage, of course. If you look at the same introduction of IT into the private world, everybody has the new gadget and the new thing. But in the working environment, everybody is resisting because they're all scared of what this new technology can do to their own jobs. And in shipping, of course, people are very proud of the kind of expertise that we need because shipping is complex. It's a complicated environment. We made it even more complicated than it should be, but it is definitely something for which you need experience and expertise. So people don't like the idea that a computer comes in and can do things better, which is seldom the case. It simply allows us to work better. It's a tool. I've always considered IT as a tool, but some people don't see it this way. And the resistance to change has always been strong, even today.
I agree with you with resistance to change. I was part of a team at Mobil Oil in the mid-90s, around the same time when you talked about 98, 97, 98, that had to implement ISO, ISM to the U.S. flag fleet. So imagine I'm 25, get pulled off the ships because I actually know how to use a word processor. Forget about Excel. That was something else at that point. Lotus Notes, I think. And how to use a word processor just to keep track of minutes to meetings and safety procedures, and then try to work with the consulting team to implement ISO, ISM, talk about resistance to change, right? This was something that has been happening for a while. But I do want to pivot a little bit what you're doing at Oceanly in the extent of you come in, one of the problems that IT has is, and I think it's not just to maritime, but in general, is the fact that you have a lot of hype around it. I chuckled when you said blockchain because that was going to solve everything 7 years ago. And it has its applications, but maybe not exactly what everybody thought. But when you go in and you talk about what you're doing at Oceanly, and you have to deal with maybe a little bit of the hype combined with the worry of taking people's jobs, how do you position that and how do you talk to folks to say that, hey, we don't want to get rid of anything. We want to help your company do their and their employees do their jobs better and more effective?
Yeah, that's absolutely the scope. So I've always thought, even when I was working, we have EMI problems in the 70s on board of our ships. So I thought that optical fibers connecting not only computers, but radios, etc., were the solution. And I didn't want to kill the job of people who were building cables. I wanted to make the job of people a better one. And that has always been the scope that I had. And the scope, I think, of information technology is not to kill jobs. Simply, actually, IT has created more jobs in the last 30 years, probably than any other industry. But it's simply to allow us to work better. So how do we do it? Well, performance is a high-speed data collecting solution. The whole idea started in 2007, actually, when I was in SpecTec. We were thinking about the intelligent ship at that time. We had a project with Yan Ming that was brilliant. So a long time ago. It evolved because I found out that one of my competitors, when I left SpecTec, had started to do something very similar. And I became the CEO of this company. And then I was able to carve it out. And that is where Oceanly comes from. And the idea of high-speed data collecting was pretty ahead of its time when they started in 2014, I think. And they developed a data collector that was really intelligent. So it was not simply collecting data, but making sure that the data was good. Because one of the issues that we have today with all the sensors on board is that even if we are supposed to check it, in reality, there is very little checking of the sensors on board. And when you depend from sensors, you have to make sure that they give you the right signal, the right output. It's like if you're sick and you want to measure, your temperature, you want to be sure that your thermometer is giving you the right temperature. Otherwise, you are dead. And that is what Oceanly has worked on. And after that, which took about 4 years, there's been software on top of the data. So analyzing the data. Why all this? Because every single other tool that, even including the AMOS from SpecTec, a big issue on that you had to insert a lot of data in order to retrieve a lot of information. And this data insertion is cumbersome, is problematic, it's time consuming, it's expensive, and therefore it ended up by never being done the way it should have been done. Okay. Also because our industry did never really embrace digitalization as it should have been from data. If you don't have the right data, digitalization is worth zero. It's like having Excel spreadsheets with the wrong numbers in it. It simply doesn't work. Okay?
Are we getting better at that over time? You've been dealing with data for a while. Is this getting better? Is this getting worse? Do you think that? Do you think that? And I think it's also another question which we could talk about later with AI. Do you think that as people start to use AI more, and as people understand that you need to have good inputs into AI, do you think that people will be more aware of the data and start to pay attention to things like the sensors? Are they doing their job? Are they doing their job correctly, using the analogy of taking your temperature?
So it's funny because, you asked me first, have things changed? Well, not very, very much, because data still remains, the source of data still remains a big issue, a big problem. From a plant maintenance point of view, it's still done the wrong way, and therefore forget about it, But even when it comes to a solution like ours, first of all, I've seen competitors starting with manual inputs. How can you go digitalization and then rely on noon report, which is inserted by hand by a poor captain, which is already overloaded with work, and he has to fill 11 pages or 20 pages every single day of data and information. This is really wrong. This is not digitalization. So that's why we focus so much on collecting data. When you collect data, you have to be very certain that the data is correct. And you have to implement into the software the mechanism to make sure that the data is correct. So you cannot simply say you're measuring exhaust gas temperature cylinder liner number 1, etc. And it does 360, 360, 360, 500, 360, 360, or 800. That is not correct. It cannot be. A temperature cannot jump, on an engine like this. It means that the sensor has an issue. But what I've noticed is that nobody cares. We care. And I think everybody should care. Now, the problem that you asked me is, are people paying attention now? Yes, because when they're trying to implement not even AI, but even just machine learning, or simply to extract data, statistical data, from everything that they have, they found out that it's not reliable.
I had that problem years ago, and I won't get into it. And I remember challenging an engineer on the company I worked with. They were getting monthly consumption reports on ships, okay? And that would get uploaded into ShipNet, okay, to keep look at the earnings. Well, one of the consumptions for one of the speed and in the laden condition went from 77 tons a day to 93 over a month. It only had 3 days at which the ship ran at that speed and that condition. I actually did the math and I said, somebody probably added a 0. Maybe they meant to write 80, but when they inputted, they wrote 800. I was told by the engineering department to mind my business internally. It was only until somebody saw it who was understanding of why I was so interested in this number internally, called the the technical manager said, hey, could you check this? Oh, we called the ship. Yeah, they fat fingered it. Here, let me send you the updated copy. It was almost exactly the number that I thought, because I did the math and I said, this makes no sense. But that was one number that I happened to be paying attention to. And think about that from your point of view, right? You have thousands of, or tens of thousands of data points being collected every day.
Yeah. So yeah, that is the reality of what we do, and the beauty of what we do is that we simply now are able to collect an enormous amount of data, verify if the data is constant, correct, within the thresholds which are applicable for that measurements, and if there is a trend, we can raise the alerts first, the alarm after, and say, hey, within, the trend is such that you're going to have a major issue within a month or two, you should do this and you should do that. It's not only condition-based maintenance, it's also simply a good way to make use of technology today. It doesn't replace your experience. It fortifies your experience. It supports your experience. And this is what I'm trying to tell everybody. I don't see, even if I'm a fan of marine autonomous surface ships of mass, also because I think that less and less people will want in the future to sail for months and months, or risk to be trapped in Hormuz or before with the COVID and so on. I do believe that we're going to have less crews on board, but they will be probably more experienced. They will be probably better ones and better paid and so on. But the reality is that we are allowing now the crew and the office to basically have an increased knowledge of what is happening to the equipment on board. And this is vital for good operation of the vessel, especially considering how ships are becoming gigantic, enormous, which means enormous liability. And when you have an enormous liability of billions and billions, you just cannot leave it to the hazard. It just can't happen.
A question that I'd like to shine a light on, maybe a little bit more in a positive way. We talked about some of the struggles that we've had, especially around data and ownership. In your 30 years plus, what has the maritime shipping side gotten right when it comes to digitalization or even data? What are we doing right? Is there some things that we're doing right, or at least right now on a good path?
I think that even if it wasn't pushed and now there are some obstacles, I come from a period where shipping was polluting a lot. I live in La Spezia. I lived in La Spezia when I was in the Navy. Coming back from the waterfront, from the sea, I could see a yellow cloud all over La Spezia all the time. It was really yellow. I have photos to prove it. I've even posted on LinkedIn as evidence. We had a coal power station in La Spezia. And plus we had ships, and plus we have the Navy ships, which were really burning the worst possible fuel. What we have done, we got tremendously better in coming into ports and not polluting at all. This, I really like it. I know that there is resistance. We didn't do a very good job. Europe maybe didn't do a very good job, but it got better. And that is, at the end, these are the results that we need. We need the clearer skies. La Spezia was a terrible place to live in. The pollution, the dirt on the streets. There were protests with women showing their laundry, that they, like a typical Italian, they were putting outside the windows, and it got black. My office, I would put the hand on my desk in the morning and it would be black, even if I had double glazed windows and so on. So that has been fantastic. And shipping has, maybe not uniformly, maybe it has been pushed a little bit, but we have embraced this thing of getting better. And another part, I think we have understood that if we want to be efficient, we need to adopt digitalization. It has taken a much longer time than what I would have thought. I thought when I started to sell AMOS, I thought it would have been embraced by storm, let's say. And it takes a long time. In shipping, we move in shipping at the speed of our ships, so slowly, okay? That airplanes, the aeronautical industry moves much faster. They have airplanes traveling at 100 kilometers an hour, and they now have, since many, many years, everything is uniform. You have the same landing procedures and arriving procedure and departure procedure in every airport in the world. We still have different notice of arrival and notice of departure in every port in the world. But we're hopping along, and I feel AI may be another push in the right direction. notwithstanding all the issues there as well.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that. I think we've had a few different waves of technology, even in just the last 20 years. The first one was everybody was going to replace shipbrokers, and that didn't happen because they realized the relationships. And then we joked around a little bit about blockchain. What was that, 5, 7 years ago, right before and during COVID, the whole blockchain revolution. And I think there's applications. I do think I look at what's going on in the letter of credits and bills of lading. Makes a little bit of sense to have some blockchain. There was a broader push. Now we have AI, and AI is not only taking over a lot of the products that we see in maritime, but a lot of things that we see in our own personal space. Is this a real good opportunity to advance some digitalization because we as people are more familiar with AI and what it can do? How do you see this evolving in our space over time?
I think AI is a typical example of having launched a fantastic product in the worst possible way by the same people who designed it. I mean, the CEOs of Anthropic, of OpenAI, coming to say, oh, this is going to destroy every job in the planet. 90% of the programmers will lose their job, which, may I say, I'm not a programmer, but together with my programmers, I was laughing my head out. I said, this is so ridiculous, it doesn't stand on its foot. And then the journalists repeating and amplifying even this concept, which made it that when you enter into an office and you start saying, and we have the AI module, you're basically given the go ahead, Satan, because everybody's saying, I don't want to lose my job. In reality, AI is fantastic, the way I use it. Like every single tool, you have to be aware of limitations or problems or issues. It's also in its infancy. It's only 3 years old. And I can't wait to see how it's going to be in 10 years from now. I think it's going to change a lot of things for the good. I think it's going to change a lot of things on the bad. This has happened in every single technical revolution. The cars replaced the horses. Initially, it was fantastic. You didn't have any tons of manure to shovel, from the streets. So the stench was less. It looked fantastic. It created millions of jobs and so on, but it created pollution. It created the need of oil that polluted even more. There is always the dark side in every technical revolution. Always. When I started to work with the internet, I started on ARPANET. I saw Mosaic the day it was created in 1997. And I started to work, and I thought it was going to be amazingly beautiful internet. And then you have the darknet, you have the viruses, you have the hackers, you have the porn, you have all the negative side. There is always a dark side in every innovation. And AI is already not different if you think about all the fake videos and all this kind of thing. But when I use it for work, oh my God, look, it's just amazing.
Can you give me an example of something that you really have applied AI to and just really been floored at the result for something you're working on now? Without giving away too much, I don't want you to give away the farm, so to speak. But I know internally at Wood Mackenzie, we own Vessel Tracker, the AIS platform, and just looking at things how we can analyze data and building out potential new features that were beta testing over a weekend, or alpha testing really, over a weekend, having a dashboard built, done, and sending it out to people on a Monday saying, hey, somebody in our team said, I got really jazzed about working on this. What do you guys think? And I built a dashboard. It's feeding this data. This is how we're doing it. Are you encountering these sort of things right now? Is there something that you can point to that you've just made leaps and bounds on?
In two different areas, I'll give you an example. So one is personal, for instance. Personal, it was work related. I got a bid from a very large company. It's still going on. We've been shortlisted and hoping it's going to end up okay. A tender was 290 pages. Okay, 290 pages. Normally, I should have had to read all of them, take notes, highlight the main points, make a list of all the pain points, of all the issues, the problems, the delivery schedule, the tables, the constraints, and so on. I loaded on Claude, and I said, can you please make a summary and highlight? You have to learn how to do the instruction. Can you highlight the pitfalls, the problems, the issues, and so on? I started in the morning. At the evening, I had the bid ready. 290 pages bid. because it took me only a couple of hours to do the full analysis. I had to correct a few things. And then I said, okay, can you please prepare me the bid replies? It did the whole work. Would have taken me normally more than a week to do it by myself. And I did it, when I say 8 hours, yes, but I was, 8 hours I was having lunch, I was having a cup of coffee, and so on. That was a game changer for me because I now use it all the time to analyze documents, even legal documents. If it is very important, I do it only with AI. If it is not very important, so just a letter that I had to write to my water company that billed me an incredible amount of money because I made a mistake and I wanted to write a legal letter. So I simply tasked law, can you please write a legal letter according to the law and so on. And he did it in seconds. If it is very important, I go to my lawyer also because he's my best friend and therefore I have to do it. That's obvious.
But that's, I think, the important thing about people learning how to use AI, how to implement it in their businesses. And I do think, especially with maritime shipping, as well as a lot of other businesses, it's not going to replace the subject matter expert. And it'll allow the subject matter expert, in your case, somebody co-founding company and running it on a daily basis, it'll allow you to make the more important decisions instead of spending with this bid. I would guess you probably spent a week in previous times putting together a bid, reading it, maybe asking some questions that were a little less clear, getting not interfered with, but having to have your attention taken to maybe an ongoing client issue, production issue. And now all of a sudden, you could just use the AI to structure a response and to understand what the pain points are, in this case of a RFP, in the matter of a day.
It would have taken me more than 290 pages with a lot of requirements, a lot of, I really needed to create, and I did create a checklist internally to see if we were in compliance. When you have 290 pages, you have to make sure that, and this is a very large government entity, and therefore I had to be very precise also in the reply. And the fact that I was able to reply very quickly and then very comprehensive reply, I think is an asset when you're running these type of bids. I hope, we know that we've been shortlisted now, but I hope it's going to go on, and I will continue to make use of for every analysis that I need. The second part is that we obviously are implementing AI initially, carefully, and it has to work immediately. We can't play with these things. We have ships, we have a very large fleet. We must be sure that what we're doing is correct. We don't play, we don't come into the market unless we verify that it works properly. But what impressed me is that how easy it is to upload the technical manual of an engine, and then you start asking questions and you get the replies immediately because it has analyzed the full thing. And therefore you're able, we're collecting that data. And we simply ask AI and say, okay, we now have enough data on the 4 diesel generators of this class of vessels. Can you please compare all of them and find out if there are discrepancies between the 6 ships, sister ships, on how the diesel generators have been used in the last 6 months or the last 12 months? And when you see the reply, it's really fantastic. I mean, it would take 6 months of one person to do the same job, and you get it in 5 minutes. And once you have the replies, then you can take corrective action. You can even ask, what do you recommend? Remember, these are closed systems. Our AI is a closed, because a lot of people say, but what about hallucination? Hallucinations, you have it when you have an open system that scans the web and finds out a lot of all the lies which are the falsities which are on the web. But when you're doing a technical job, you don't get lies on a technical manuals on measurements. So essentially, it provides an enormous amount of information, and it analyzes it for you down to the most one-line item. You can ask the system, say, okay, I don't want an 11 pages report. All I want is to know what is the issue. And in one case, the reply was, I believe that the issue is a sensor because it doesn't make any sense on the fuel consumption part. And that was amazing.
That was amazing. And I'm sure maybe that's the same answer your human in the loop would have given you, but at the same time, you got to pretty quick. One of the questions that I love to ask, and I think that you would bring a tremendous response to this, starting from your point in the Navy, NATO, all sorts of wonderful technology-based maritime companies. If you saw somebody getting out of the Navy today and they were looking at different career paths, what would you say to them about working in this industry?
I keep saying since many years that our job is not a real job, it's a disease, it's a virus. Once you get it, you cannot get rid of it. Shipping is not the best paid job that you can get for the amount of work that we do, especially in IT. But I've always loved it because I don't think I ever got bored a single day in my work. Shipping is so diversified, it's so fantastic. When I was running SpecTec, I had, if I remember correctly, 49 different nationalities in my team. I was traveling. I visited more than 90 countries, my work. I lived in 9 or 10. I had customers in 50 probably. And it's just phenomenal. Shipping opens the world to you. It's unlike any other, well, aviation for sure, but shipping, because it moves slowly, it gives you more time to appreciate an Indian crew, a Filipino guy, and a Chinese employee, and so on. I've always adored this part of our job, how, it helps bring in the world together. I like the fact that shipping, I would tell to this guy, I said, you are going to go for a job that will never probably pay you for the work that you do, but if you don't quit after 6 months because you don't like it, you're going to love it forever because it's tremendously interesting.
Yeah.
Our job is interesting.
Yeah.
And
I always tell people that this job has an impact that goes well beyond the daily job. And if you look at the number of people that are involved in this industry and how it impacts global trade, and maybe something like Hormuz makes people think about global trade a little bit more and the impact of what happened and is happening there and how it impacts everybody. I think that to me was always the allure of working in global shipping was, hey, you can actually make an impact as an individual on something that is pretty large, felt by everybody, really.
That's correct. Sometimes I would like shipping to be less stubborn, but I still love it.
Yeah, you always get the headaches. As we wrap up here, I always love to ask, what are you reading? I think we met in Miami, and I know we had a bunch of trade shows recently, and I'd love to see what's on your Kindle or on your desk or what you like to read. Or maybe you're just too busy for all that, given what you're doing.
I'll move my camera.
Okay, let's see what we got. Okay.
I don't know if you can see. I have over 3,000 books. So exactly,
I see it. Yeah.
Even on the steps there. So I have well over 3,000 books. I built a library in my house. That's my dream. It's up there. You can see it.
Yeah, I can see it. Absolutely.
So Second World War. I have a huge passion for history, Roman history, Second World War. And of course, I don't know how many books I have on ships. I have every single book published on Titanic in English or Italian, but in English mainly. And almost, what else? I have archaeology because it's another passion. When I was young, I used to read constantly for probably 30 years. So from age 14, I was reading one book a week. So 50 books a year. And now I'm reading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 books together. So I start and I read the 10 pages, then I move to another one, then I read 20 pages, then I move to another one, and then I finish it, and then I move to another one, and then I go back to the previous one. And I read very fast. I read in blocks. By reading continuously, I've developed a way to read that allows me to go very quickly page by page and still memorize everything. I think the reading is
interesting. All right. Well, I think you're one of the first people we had who have a full-blown library and shared it with us. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So reading a few things and a lot on World War II history. I got into reading about World War II history. One of my favorite books, and I mentioned it recently, was called A Woman of No Importance. I'm sure you've read that. It was about the woman an American who had one leg and escaped the Nazis. So it's called
A Woman of No Importance.
Yes, you should read it. It's fantastic. She ended up, a synopsis, but lost her leg. She wasn't born with a defect. She lost her leg. And then the U.S. she was working for the State Department. The U.S. kind of rejected her, but then was doing work as a reporter during, the late 30s, early 40s. It was very interesting. I'll let you read the book. It's kind of a really interesting story about resilience, smarts, and really the will that you could do anything. And the fact that the way her life turned out makes you go, how did that happen? Like, so many things have to fall in place. And I think about that a lot in career as well. Sometimes you can do everything right, everything. And sometimes it comes down to luck. It comes down to being in the right place
Sometimes
at the right time,
at
maybe
the
with the
right
right
time.
idea. And I've seen it over and over again, including myself. And this book is a little bit of that. So appreciate you coming on, Giampiero. It was really interesting because I love hearing about your long history in our industry and the impact that's had on you and you've had on it. And I wish you the best with your endeavors. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Chris, for having me on. Take care then. Bye.